Right. So that's a brief introduction about us. Now I will start with the content, content which needs to be presented in this particular talk. Uh, I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, sir, visible it is.
Right. So what we are going to discuss is basically the future of XEV. XEV, that means HEV, hybrid electric vehicle, or if there is any alternate fuel cell electric vehicle. All of these things we are going to discuss in this particular talk. And these are some of the companies which are basically, sorry, the voice is low. Let me wait. Now, is it okay? The voice is
Yes, sir, perfect.
okay. 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 So I think I will not go into the much depth of what we are basically. You have already watched the video. So we work closely with all major IITs and NITs, and uh, on a electric vehicle level, we are doing everything end-to-end solution. We are giving to companies. We are providing them human resources. We are providing them training, supply, parts procurement. I think again. Okay, parts procurement. So maybe, I mean, if somebody is facing problem with the audio, you have to check your internet connection. So that might be some issue there. So, uh, parts procurement, consulting, testing and homologation, design and product development. We do all of the things that we can do in the electric vehicle domain, and these companies like Altair, MATLAB, Simulink, all of these companies have become partner with us because they see that we are catering to industries as well as to the academia. So it's an opportunity for them to reach out to more industries and students. So that's how we kind of interlink. We act as a intermediary platform, and so on a broader scale, if you see, we provide support at every stage of product development into the electric vehicle segment. When you talk about product development stage, it starts from concept building, then goes to benchmarking. After that comes the design and simulation. Then comes prototyping. After that comes calibration and optimization. Then comes your verification and validation. And final stage is certification and sign off. So this is the step where your vehicle is completely ready, and you have to get it tested and verified from agencies like ARAI and ICAT, because these are the agencies which basically allow uh, any electric vehicle manufacturer, or be it any automobile manufacturer, to kind of make their vehicle model available on the dealership side, or make it available to be registered in the RTO, and so that it can drive on the road. So this is the particular stage of product development. We'll go into the details of each and every step. On a broader scale, you see structural evaluation, electronics, material testing, noise and vibration, TGTC, safety critical component, uh, engine and powertrain, engine design and simulation. These are some of the things that is basically area of our research topic in the electric vehicle domain. We'll also go into the detail of each and every topic. When you kind of see this electric vehicle industry on an automobile industry from far eye view, you will get to understand that not only the automotive industry which you see like OEMs, if OEMs stands for original equipment manufacturers. So when you talk about OEMs, they are manufacturing passengers vehicle, they are manufacturing commercial vehicle, there are two-wheeler manufacturers, three-wheeler manufacturers, and there are also component manufacturers. Now, these constitutes your core automotive uh, segment. But other than this core automotive, we have upstream segment and downstream segment, which are also industries which are related to automobile, right? So you talk about software, right? So software companies like Ansys, sorry, Ansys, Altair, MSC, Adams, or your Abacus, your Dassault Systems, all of these companies are basically software providers, and they are also a upstream industry which largely contributes to automotive industry as a whole. Then there comes electronics industry. Uh, there are industries like plastic, rubber, and glass industries, fuel industries, metal, which are primary and fabricated metals which are used for your seat metal and other body works in the vehicle. Steel and mining industries. So these are also these are upstream industries because they are used before the product development, right? They comes before the product development cycle, and after your product is developed, you come to downstream. In the downstream segment, you have finance and insurance industry, your aftermarket service, repair, auto parts industry, used car market industry, car hires and rentals industry, fuel supply, advertising, transportation, warehousing, and logistics. So these are some of the downstream industries which are uh, closely linked with the core automotive industry. Other adjacent industries include your finance and legal, etc. So on a broader scale, these are the industries which are impacted by core automotive sector. Now, when you look into the growing passenger vehicle production in India, uh, it was in 1980, it was 0.05 million, the production of passenger vehicle in India. At that time, this delicensing regulation was there. And so what was happening at that time is basically uh, let's talk about a manufacturer like TVS. Now, TVS has this foundation that TVS can only manufacture 50,000 of their two-wheeler or three-wheeler at a particular location. If they want to manufacture more than 50,000, they have to set up one another manufacturing company somewhere in other area, in other state, and then only they can manufacture uh, whatever limitation was there posed by the government. So that was creating a problem for automotive manufacturers. They were not basically free to roll the number of vehicles they wanted to roll in the market. Now, in 1990 comes your globalization and liberalization economy, which was done by your then finance minister Manmohan Singh. So 1990s saw a very crucial stage, and that's where the deregulation happened. And after that, there was no limitation as such that this is the number of vehicle that you can manufacture. Basically, the regulation was given that if you want to manufacture, let's say 1 lakh vehicle, you are free to manufacture, but at least they should be sold. It should not be like this should be kept in the warehouse, right? So until and unless you can sell these vehicles, you are free to manufacture as much vehicle as you can. And you can see from 0.05 million in 1980, 10 years beyond, it is 0.2 million, right? And then 2000, it's 0.7 million. And 2010, it is 2 million. Now, can anybody guess what would be the figure of passenger vehicle production right now, 2021? Any estimation? No, 2 million in 2010, it was 2 million. That means 20 lakh, right? 1 million is 10 lakh. So if 2010 is 2 million, then what would be an approximate figure right now, 2020, 21? Right, Sisir has said 4 million. So it's close to between 4 and 5 million. So you can see the exponential growth at a decade gap, a 10 years gap. What is the production, happening on a passenger vehicle side? Now, when you closely look into the Indian vehicle market, this is just some data because it's very essential for you to understand, the future where we are going to, be there in the 2030 and 35. Now, when you look into the current uh, vehicle and road space share, right? Road share. So, which type of vehicle is sharing what amount of percentage of roads, right? So two-wheelers are having 28.4% shares on the road, private cars 49%, auto and taxis 12.8%, buses 2.2%, and LCV and trucks 7.6%. So LCV, can anybody tell me what is the full form of LCV?
Commercial vehicle, sir.
Light commercial vehicle, right, Veera. Great. So you see, the private car has somewhere around 49% of road share, and that needs to be reduced. We need to uh, increase the number of road share for buses. It's just only 2.2%. If it is going to increase, then only the public transport and everything will increase. And that is again a chicken and egg problem. Until and unless people will not feel that they should use public transport, the number of buses will not increase, and in turn, the numbers will keep on increasing. So that's why in February this year, 2021, this vehicle scrappage policy was introduced by the government. And now what will happen is all those vehicles which are like 10 years, 15 years of old, depending on every state regulation. So, in Delhi, if any vehicle is 10 years old, they will have to go through a fitness test, just like you see an RTO in your locality or city. There will be an fitness testing center just beside the RTO where you need to go and give your vehicle. They will give you the fitness certificate that your vehicle is fit to travel on the road, to be on the road. Uh, this is basically because of the number of increasing vehicles on the road, and also because of now you see there are Bharat Stage 6, BS6, BS5 is now there in the engines. And these 14, 15 years old vehicles have now BS3, BS2 in them. So, it's just a way of curbing the amount of pollution which vehicles are emitting. And yes, so what we are talking is basically the number of vehicles in 2018, right from 1998, you can see the numbers, how these numbers are increasing. There is an exponential growth in the number, right? Two-wheeler, 385% growth since 1998. So this is 360% rise in the vehicles in the city. So numbers of vehicle has been increasing year by year in the Indian vehicle space. So this is the current figure: passenger vehicles 3.6 million, two-wheelers 21 million, commercial vehicles 0.8 million, and three-wheelers 0.7 million. So this is just a projection of what would be the number of vehicles in the coming year. Altogether, you see, from 2005, in 2035, we are expected to see somewhere around 372.7 million vehicles on the road, right? So this is quite huge as far as the space and the road and infrastructure network we have. But yes, there will be this much amount of vehicles because again, the population will keep on increasing, and the demand, this is a game of demand and supply. As much as the demand will be there, the suppliers and manufacturers will keep on supplying the vehicles. So 2025, it is expected somewhere around 246 million. 2015, it was 121 million altogether. I'm not talking about just passenger vehicle. It is total number of vehicles, which include two-wheeler, three-wheeler, SCV, LCV, car, and SUVs. So when you look into the history of automobile as a whole, there is this thing called National Auto Policy, which was launched by government, and this National Auto Policy has three pillars into them. First pillar was innovation, research, and development. Second was auto component and manufacturing. Third was vehicle manufacturing. Now, coming somewhere around 2010, new two pillars were introduced into this. Uh, Green mobility and ecosystem development. Looking into your pollution level and other economic pressures, we were bound to add two more pillars into this. But initially, back in 1980 and 1990, these were the three pillars, right? So that's why you see these companies like Hero Honda, Maruti Suzuki, they all formed in collaboration with Japanese company, because at that time, not much technology was available in India. So all these collaborations were happening, but the government also imposed certain binding rules that if Suzuki is partnering with Maruti, they have to transfer some technology to the employees who are working in these companies. So that's how the basic national auto policy was framed. Now, automotive mission plan. This is a concept introduced again by the Congress government, and automotive mission plan was launched in 2006 with 10 years of your mission plan, vision, and all that. So just like what you see in your semester exam, that okay, I have to secure this much amount of marks. That it's just like a goal setting, that okay, within the next 10 years, what is that Indian automotive industry uh, wants to achieve. So in 2006, this was the goal that was given in the automotive mission plan. The goal is to emerge as the destination of choice in the world for design and manufacture of automobiles and auto components. And there was some target which was allocated. So first was target output of $145 billion, then GDP contribution of around 10%, right? And then additional employment generation of 25 million. So this was 10 years automotive mission plan, which was launched in 2006. And you see, it was to the surprise that India achieved this particular target. The number of passenger vehicle in 2006 on a global scale, global performance scale, India was coming at 11th position in 2006. And it basically went to 7th position in 2016, right? So commercial vehicle side, it remained the same, and two-wheeler side, it remained the same, but there was a huge jump in on the passenger vehicle side. Also, if you see on a GDP side, we have like from 5%, we saw a GDP contribution of automobiles to 10%. Employment, it should be in million. Sorry, I have written it in billion. It should be in million. So in 2006, it was 13 million. And then in 2016, it increased to 38 million. The revenue also increased from $34 billion to $145 billion, and export increased from $4.1 billion to $35 billion. So India was able to achieve the target it has allocated. Then comes your automotive mission plan, which is again revised after 10 years. So this was 2016 to 2026. And the aim is to make the Indian automotive industry significant contributor to the Skill India program. So now you see the goal setting has been changed from the previous goal setting of being a world leading manufacturers to the Skill India program. So now the three target goals are: India has to be the third largest passenger vehicle manufacturers in the world, and GDP contribution of somewhere around 12%, and then additional employment generation of 65 million in 10 years, right? So lots of focus is given in the automobile segment on a skill side, because you see this much amount of employment generation is there just because of this automobile industry. And you look into the financial year 15 and then your financial year 26. So, you know, this is the base case. We were at this particular scale on a component aftermarket. This is just a bifurcation of all the target goals that we had uh, thought of achieving. And because of Corona and lockdown, there were some disturbances. But even though, if it continue at the same rate, then also by 26, we will be able to achieve this much amount of target. And on an optimistic side, if things went well, then this would be the future we will be looking forward in terms of numbers. So when you look into the Indian automobile industry as a whole, we look not only India, we also look on the Asian countries. So because Indian manufacturers supply their vehicles in all these Asian countries, be it Indonesia, Maldives, and other, there are so many countries which comes in the Southeast Asian segment, and they are all a major importers of automobile which are manufactured in India. Somewhere down the lane, I myself have seen that the countries, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and all these African countries, although they kind of import Chinese-based electric vehicle, but again, their thought and their kind of mindset is that the Indian-made electric vehicles are more uh, quality worthy and they can be more reliable. So automobile manufacturers in India have built a reputation wherever they have sent their vehicles, right? So now you see a contrast, right? From the previous time of crowded railway station, now you go to any airport, you will feel like I'm again on the railway station because the airports are also now crowded. So the purchasing capacity of people have increased. Previously, you just remember those time when we were in class 10th and 9th. At that time, it was very hard for us to even buy a sort of motorcycle. Forget about motorcycle. But nowadays, it's an easy thing, right? A guy who is studying in class 10th can buy 20,000, 30,000 worth of mobile phone. So you see the purchasing capacity have increased, right? The economy have increased. We have come from a developing nation. Uh, Still, we are into the developing stage, but yes, now looking forward in next 10 years, 15 years, we will be on that particular stage where we will be on a verge of going into the developed country sort of stage. So the changing scenario you see on a growing economy side where countries like India, uh, increasing consumerism. I mean, you don't need a hand wash, a spare hand wash at your home, but still you will go to a mall, and if you see a hand wash there, you will buy that. I mean, that is the kind of mentality right now. People are scrolling their mobile. They see the products on Amazon and Flipkart, and it's so intuitive. I mean, even though you don't need that product, you are bound to buy that product, maybe because of advertisement and other influentialism. But yes, there is a lot of exposure, digital exposure, which is happening, and the people capacity have also increased, and people consumerism attitude have increased. Now people are buying more and more, right? So that trend we are seeing right now. And because of all the changes in Asian countries, mobility has gone through a transformation. So not only consumerism on a materialistic world, but we also see consumerism on the mobility side as well. So when you look into the Asian countries, the options for mobility are this is your pedestrian, like you are walking on foot, and then there is a bicycle, you are riding a bicycle, then comes your two-wheeler, riding a two-wheeler bike, and then comes your four-wheeler. So this foot walking is high affordable, right? Anyone can afford this. Anyone can afford a two-wheeler bicycle, right? So uh, when you go in by this arrow on an x-axis, the affordability will start decreasing, right? So very few people have this affordability to buy electric vehicles, right? So personal mobility, and then comes this shared mobility. On a shared mobility, Auto rickshaw is very high affordable. Anybody can afford riding on the auto rickshaw. Then comes your electric, this is bus, and then comes your train, and then comes your taxi. So this is high affordability to the low affordability. So shared mobility has created a bigger impact in the recent times with the introduction of Ola, Uber, and all these shared mobility options. Now you see a great shift in the mobility industry. So shared mobility side, you see emergence of companies like Redbus, Shuttle, Ola, Uber, Zoom. All these companies have changed the way people were traveling back in 1990, 2000, until 2010. So it all happened uh, between 2010 and 15. You see companies like Byju's or any other automotive, Ola, Uber, Zoom, all these companies which are basically in the shared mobility, or talk about Redbus, they all started in this particular segment, 10 to 15, because the number of mobile phones penetration in India started increasing, and the internet connectivity and the data connectivity also increased. So digitization has resulted in the emergence of new shared mobility option. When you look into the mobility as a whole, this is the stat that we have currently. 30% of the people do not travel. Either they are old age people, they are staying at home, they are female, who is handling the house, and there are 13% of the people who commute by the bicycle. 15% do the private transport, sort of use private transport. 23% on foot. 1% use any other transportation mode. 18% use public transport. So public transport on a audience side, on the total commute side, is 18%, and private transport is 15%. So when you look into the challenges for the mobility, now you have seen that the people consumerism attitude has increased, and new shared mobility options have come into the market. But still, we are facing a few challenges, and these challenges are high expenditure due to the improved standard of living. We are living in an era where the prices of the fuels have increased so much uh, that we need to combat, right? There is high congestion on the road. You see right now on a road how much congestion is happening. There is high pollution, there is huge oil import bills, and also there are high road accidents and deaths happening on a daily basis. You talk about high road accidents, you can see uh, this is the breakdown of the countries like India, US, UK, and Japan. uh, Deaths that happen for 1 lakh population in India is highest, followed by US, UK, and lowest in Japan. So focus is also on the safer mobility side, and to kind of uh, avoid this high road accident, to minimize this high road accidents that were happening. In 2015, this safety regulations were introduced, and at that time you will see new technologies which came, like your seat belt reminder, reverse parking sensors, RPAS, SW speed warning, driver airbag, ESC electronic stability control. So ESC, AEB, and ADAS are some of the future technologies where industries are working. There are few vehicles you see in the market which are of higher range, like Mercedes and BMW. They have this sort of features enabled into them, but because of the cost, it's not that much affordable. So the goal is to make it affordable, make it implemented in at least those vehicles which are coming in the range of 5 lakh to 10 lakh. So many safety regulations will be implemented by 2020. This 2020 has passed, so I think this is what we are talking about. Next phase of future safety regulations to be based on data. So we are looking on the data side. So lots of uh, new technologies are being introduced on the only on the basis of data. So I will tell you about this communication that is currently happening between vehicle to vehicle communication, vehicle to grid communication, vehicle to infrastructure communication. So all of these are based on the data. I will get into the depth of the data side. Technology development to consider Indian customer requirements. So we know that India is a middle income group economy where most of the people used to buy cars which are in the range of 5 lakh, 10 lakh, maximum 15 lakh. So that's where most of the technologies has to be implemented. There are still some concern area. You can see animals on the road. So when this idea of autonomous car and all these things come on the Indian ecosystem side, it's a little bit difficult. So maybe, I mean, by 2035 or beyond to 2040, you can see the autonomous car budge in the market, but it's still the way is quite far. We will be working mainly on the electric vehicle side, hydrogen fuel cell side. Pure electric vehicle will be hard to come right now. The hybrid electric vehicle will come first, and then slowly and steadily we will progress in this particular segment. So what is the solution for these challenges? The first is the number of buses has to be increased, and this is just a start, which will give you an idea that the number of buses per 1,000 population. In Thailand, it is 8.6. In China, it is 8.1. In India, it is just 1.2. So the number of buses needs to be increased, and we need somewhere around 3 million buses to cater to people requirement, but has only 0.3 million buses. So major effort and push, almost 10 times is required in India for public transport. I think the slides are quite in the numbers, so I will go a little bit faster because otherwise it will take a lot of time. So almost 126 slides there. So pardon me. View full screen. Mobility solutions on the global context. This is a case which we see in the European and US economy, where whenever you want to go from point A to point B and you are putting your destination in your mobile phone, the mobile phone itself will give you all the alternative options that are available for you to go from point A to point B. So that's where we are also working on integration of all the mobility options. And now in some cities, like on the metropolitan cities, tier 1 cities, you will be able to find out in the Google map itself that they have started giving these options as well. So that's where we are working towards. Mobility solutions on a global context, you see it's basically autonomous, connected, electric, and shared. That's what we call the future of mobility. When anybody talks about, they talk about autonomous, connected, electric, shared. This is also the goal and agenda for your World Economic Forum, WEF, which happens yearly. So why autonomous? It is to make your vehicle safer and fatigue free. Connected means it should be accessible and convenient. Electric means there should be no emission at all. And shared means it should be utilized properly and to avoid congestion and all this reduction of congestion is the goal. However, when you talk on the ASEAN context, the whole this 4 agenda changes. So on an ASEAN context, the autonomous, connected, electric, and shared does not remain the same. It changes a little bit. So how does it changes? When you talk about affordable solution in Asian economy, there are low income group, people who are staying on a connected and shared basis. The problem is high congestion. Environment side, we are looking on a high pollution and import bills, which government is facing right now, as in they need to curb it out. And safer mobility, yes, higher accident. So this autonomous, connected, electric, and shared on the global context changes to affordable, connected, eco-friendly, and safe on an Indian context. So autonomous changes to affordable, A remains same. Connected changes to connected and shared. Electric changes to eco-friendly, and shared changes to safe. So still it is ACES, but yes, the definition is a little bit changed on the ASEAN side. So uh, these are some of the safety devices which are implemented in the vehicles, which are of high range, but still the work is going on to implement these sort of devices on the lower segment of cars as well. So you have this lane keeping systems, fatigue warning systems, autopilot, in-car video camera to record incidents, night vision devices, lane changing warning system, blind spot warning systems, front, rear end collision arm warning systems. So these are some of the high-end technologies which we are planning to introduce on a safer side. On a connected car, you see, we call a car a connected car when they are able to display these sort of features, which include traffic, weather, navigation, maintenance, access, entertainment, fuel tracking, automation, and all these features. So right now, if you are driving your vehicle, you talk about this MG Hector and Kia Seltos and all these vehicles which have launched recently. You have these modes like eco, comfort, and sport modes. But on a future side, we are looking on a addition of these three modes as well. Now we'll be looking on a relax and socialize mode, work and concentrate mode, entertainment and enjoy driving mode. So these are the few future modes which we will be looking into. So technology trends, there are a lot of new, these sort of safety technologies have already been introduced in the cars, like laminated windshields, crumple zones. So crumple zones are basically the extended parts on the front side and the back side, which basically crumples whenever there is a collision. So these all features are there. Seat belt, seat belts are introduced. Head restraint. These are some of the safety technologies which are there currently in the vehicles. Airbags are there. And then comes your active and passive safety technologies, which are related to your ECUs, electronic control units, and ECS, electronic stability control, anti-lock braking, braking system, lots of new technologies on the braking side. Sorry, there is no voice. Is my voice audible? Check.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you see on a steering side, you have lots of different variant of steering. Seat belt, you have active control retractors, seat belt retractors, load limiters, buckle pretensioners, active buckle lifter. So depending on the safety features, we have different technologies which has now come up on a vehicle level. So currently, you will see that the communication side is lot of things are happening on the communication side. So PLC communication, where power line communication were previously used, now CAN communication is used, and control area network, and these communication networks are basically your communication technologies which allows the vehicle to communicate with each other, which allows the vehicle to communicate with a grid or an infrastructure which is set up to make your vehicle safer, to make your vehicle more intelligent. So because this is the session for electric vehicle, I think I'm taking more of your time on the technology side, but okay, I will just briefly go into this, and then I will cover the electric vehicle side. So these are some of the communication types which are there in the connected vehicles, V2I, V2C, V2P, and V2X. So under vehicle to everything, all these three are included: vehicle to cloud, vehicle to pedestrian, vehicle to infrastructure. Now, when you talk about the number of sensors which are there in the vehicles currently on an electric vehicle side as well, see this much amount of sensors are currently deployed in a vehicle, right? So all these sensors transmit data. They transmit data on a regular basis, and you can't imagine on a per minute basis, somewhere around 235 GB of data is transmitted from your vehicle to the cloud network. So this data has to be stored somewhere so that using this data, the prediction can be modeled. Your vehicle can predict that, okay, driving on this road is safer or driving on that particular route is safer. Whether I should stop on this particular point for more time or less time, or let's say you can make your traffic light intelligent by allowing the more congested side of the road to have like broader time for them to clear the road compared to the side of road which is not that congested. So all of these intelligent decisions has to be made based on the data itself, right? So many companies, I mean, you talk about Google, you talk about Amazon, Amazon AWS, all these companies have started working on the cloud infrastructure. And these are some of the benefits of connected technologies. It reduces the crash. It reduces the need for infrastructure, travel time dependability, productivity improvement, improved energy efficiency. And these are some of the new business models also which have started coming. I will not go into the depth of this range finding because it is basically, it has to do with your new technologies which are there in the Tesla electric vehicles, which use radar, LiDAR, and sonar technology to find out any obstacle which is there on the road. So during your parking, whenever your vehicle is parking, it can gauge that at this particular distance there is some obstacle, and it can basically make an intelligent decision to steer your vehicle in some other direction. So need to be working how the this vehicle to vehicle communication, the basic technology which is behind this vehicle to vehicle communication is called DSRC. So dedicated short range communication it is called. And so these are some of the companies which are working on different domains of vehicle. This is very interesting stuff for future students. You can see, guys, this vehicle communication systems, all these companies like NVIDIA, Toyota, Bosch, Continental, Magna, Harman, Cisco, General Motors, all these companies. On the infotainment side, Apple have started working, Tesla, BMW, Flextronics, Ford. Cloud service, you see IBM, Dell, EMC, Amazon, Google, Orange, Business Services, all of these companies have started working on this. Autonomous side, Honda, General Motors, Hyundai, Daimler, Waymo, Uber, Volvo, Telematics, ADAS, right? So, so on autonomous, if you want to make your car autonomous, we were just discussing in the previous lectures that it is very tough for Indian economy to include automated car in the next 10 years, 15 years. But still, you have to know that what is the current progress. It's not that you are going to stay in India as well. I mean, there would be a chance where you are going to Canada or US, and there you can see the level of autonomicity which has gone into the vehicle side. SAE has introduced this particular autonomicity graph, which basically tells you that there are 5 levels of autonomicity, and we are somewhere on the level 2. So this is what we are talking about. Level 0, level 1, level 2. So depending on how much interference needs a vehicle needs from a driver, based on that this level of autonomicity has been decided. On a level 0, you have to be there, just like whatever we are doing right now with any vehicle, four-wheeler, it's called level 0. On a level 1 side, you have this this thing that you are free to uh, make your vehicle travel in the longitudinal direction. But if it needs some sort of uh, turn, in that case, your hand needs to be there. And again, you can see here the foot is not there on the brake and acceleration pedal. So this is level 1. In the level 2, you are not putting your foot and also you are not putting your hand on the steering. So it's just that you have to see the eyes are on. So you are basically looking in case if there is any fault, you can take over with the vehicle. So this is level 2. On a level 3 basis, uh, it is basically your awareness to take over. You are free to work on your mobile phone. No need for looking on the straight direction or looking on the road. But still, there should be awareness that if there is any fault happening, you can take over to the vehicle. While level 4 and level 5 are complete autonomousity sort of principles, where your hands are off, your mind is off, and there is no takeover request. Your vehicle is free to ride, free to travel in the from direction from point 1 to point B, depending on the intelligent data. And in level 5, it is completely autonomous. There is no driver needed at all. So the work that is happening right now is on the level 3 broadly. Level 4 and level 5 are still in the research phase. So these are few of the companies which are basically working on automation side. These are some of the prognostics. This has to really, deal with the troubleshooting of your vehicle. So right now, that day is gone when the vehicle repairing guy in a workshop used to come and they used to repair your brake because there is some leakage in the brake fluid and things like that. The mechanical components will start decreasing day by day. More of electronic and software components will start included in the vehicle side, in the mobility side more. So you can just understand that if there is any fault in the vehicle by introduction of your app will give you notification about if there is any fault that has happened, or if you need any sort of troubleshooting in any of the part, you can do that. So all the vehicle monitoring is now done through your remote linking. Data science and machine learning will play a major role in these avenues of electric vehicle, future electric vehicles, because lots of data. I told you about 230 GB of data. If you can think 1 minute that is being relayed to the cloud infrastructure, you can think of the amount of data, per day or per month basis. That is huge, and there should be someone who can take care of that. Artificial intelligence will also play a major role into this. I will not go into depth of AI and data science. I will skip this part. I will go completely on the electric vehicle side. So the beginning of your electric vehicle infrastructure starts from a concept called well-to-wheel analysis. So this is very important concept. Maybe if you're doing a study of electric vehicle, if you are publishing a research paper, you have to understand this well-to-wheel analysis. And basically, this tells you that the amount of your efficiency that can be achieved through electric vehicle is far uh, greater compared to your gasoline engine, because there are many people who have come recently. You will be watching YouTube videos. They will say that, see, I mean, ultimately you are burning the fuel, you are burning the coal, and then you are charging your electric vehicle with the electricity that is produced from the coal. So what are you saving at all, right? It's basically you are burning the fuel anyhow. right? But that is not the principle here. When you do the comparative analysis, you will find out that even in case of burning the coal itself, the efficiency is high in comparison to the gasoline driven vehicles. See, 80%, if a certain amount of charge is coming to charge your electric vehicle, this is making your vehicle 80% efficient, right? While in case of gasoline, there is so many losses happening, and that is almost 20% efficiency you can see right now. So uh, from power generation to the power station, right? Lots of stages are there on a power communication side, because electricity once generated on the power generation side, it is being transmitted through your cables and wires, and yes, there is some losses into that, heat losses and charge losses because of long distance wires and all. But still, uh, you see this side 16% efficiency is there on a gasoline side, while this is 24% efficient. So it's basically deals with the efficiency of electric vehicles. And here is a much more detailed analysis on x-axis and y-axis. You see the well-to-wheel carbon dioxide emission. When this is gasoline vehicle, the emission of carbon dioxide, or NOx, you can see here, it's pound, 6.5 pound, 0.4 PM 2.5 NOx and CO2. In case you are supplying the energy or the charge to the vehicle, which is electric vehicle, from the burning of coal, this is what the release of carbon dioxide, NOx, and PM 2.5 into the environment. And if your origin is completely your renewable, that means you are using solar, or you are using wind, or let's say you are using hydropower. In that case, see, there is no emission of harmful gases in the environment altogether. So anyhow, you know, if you compare, you will find out that electric vehicles are more sustainable as such. Now, I'm not going into the detail of your lithium battery and how there are also lots of discussions happening that the lithium extraction is taking a lot of energy, and then the battery, how you will kind of the used battery, what you will do with the used battery, right? They have to be uh, thrown somewhere, right? So what to do with that? I'm not going into that thing right now, because that is also kind of we can do a debate on that particular side also. Because what happens is, on the battery side, if you see in an electric vehicle, if 80% your battery is whenever your battery loses its 20% efficiency, uh, electric vehicle manufacturers will say that this battery has lost its efficiency, but still 80% efficient that battery is. So there are lots of discussions happening. So many startups have also come in this particular segment. What they are doing is, they will be they are actually guaranteeing that I will take the battery back from you after 3 years, and I will issue you a new battery. So what they will do with that 3 years old battery? Basically, they will use in low power household strategy. Let's say they will use for inverter. They can use it for driving electric three-wheeler. So there are many use cases you can think of. And as far as lithium is concerned, we have alternate sources which are right away coming. We will talk about glass batteries, which are there coming in the market. Probably by 2025, you will get to see glass batteries, and there nothing like lithium we are going to use. So just go back 5, 6 year back, and look into what forced the Indian government to launch this whole electric vehicle sort of discussion. Why Niti Aayog came into the picture, why FAME 1 and FAME 2 was introduced. So this was basically happening because of uh, there were at that time there were lots of pressures coming from the international side as well, that every country has to abide by the international regulation. This much amount of carbon dioxide has to be emitted. You have to take care of the global warming, and that comes under the picture of this thing called Kyoto Protocol. So at that time, back in 2014, 12 to 14, this Kyoto Protocol was much into discussion, and lots of meetings were happening on the climate change side as well. So Indian government came into the discussion of implementing electric vehicles. This is a, a sneak peek on the global level. So on a global level, if you see, uh, back in 1880, this is Scotty Robert Anderson and American Thomson Davenport develops electric vehicle initially, and 1897, fleet taxis were introduced in Paris and New York, but due to the inefficiency of batteries at that time, and more availability of fuels at that time, this gasoline, diesel, and petrol was much in abundance, right? So that led to the what you say. Shortcoming of electric vehicle, or electric vehicle were left behind. But in 1990, this CARB, this is an act which was introduced in US, uh, Clean Air Act, and zero emission mandate was introduced in 1990. And with this, you will start seeing many manufacturers, vehicle manufacturers, putting their effort on battery side and making the vehicle into an electric and hybrid vehicle as such. So return of electric vehicle on the international market, you see with 91 Civic and latter body, Toyota Prius was introduced in 97, 99 Honda Insight, 2001 Reva Electric. This is a popular company which started in India, but was again acquired by Mahindra. Chetan Maini is the brainchild of Reva Electric. 2008, you see Tesla introduction, and 2010 Nissan Leaf. And after that, the journey has been quite smooth. Now we are actually, I will tell you, back in 2016, whenever I was talking to anybody, they were quite, they were not confident as such that electric vehicle will be the future in the Indian economy as such. But yes, you can see what's happening right now. Every now and then, new vehicle manufacturers are coming into the market, and lots of buzz are there on a EV side. This is the data from 2019. Uh, the the percentage of total vehicle sales. Even this data remains same, because after 2020 and 21 was the Corona time itself. So hardly much difference is there. But on a global scale, you see Norway is the leading country which has maximum number of electric vehicles, with somewhere around 49.1% of the total fleet is electric, followed by Iceland, Sweden, Netherlands, all these countries. You won't find India anywhere in this. So 2018-19, you see 0.1% of total fleet that is there in the Indian road is only the electric vehicle. So we are far behind this, but still the budget is so much high. Very interesting thing to understand is, if you talk about US, the cost of electricity is higher, and the cost of your diesel and petrol is low. Even then, you see there is so much of budge on the introduction of electric vehicle. Tesla, as such, has taken the whole country by something like a storm. But in India, you see the price of electricity is very low. When you go to US and compare US and Indian electricity prices, India electricity price is nothing as compared to US, and the cost of diesel and petrol in India is quite high. So it's quite what you can say. It's very certain. We are very confident that electric vehicle are the future in the Indian economic system. There is no doubt at all that EVs will not be there. Yes, it will take some time. Largely, maybe by 2040, 50% of our fleet would be electric vehicle. But yes, the budge is there, and it will happen as such. These are some of the data on whatever sales has happened in the past year on electric vehicle side. I will not go into the depth of that. This is unveiling of your National Electric Mobility Mission Plan at PM Prime Minister Residence, again Manmohan Singh, on 9th Jan 2019. So the EV policy started forming in India in 2011. 2013 National Electric Mobility Mission Plan 2020 was launched. 2015 we have FAME plan, faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicle, FAME 1 plan, and then FAME 2 plan was launched in 2019. And you see that this FAME 1 and FAME 2 are basically the plan from the government of India uh, to have some budget allocated so that electric vehicle manufacturers will feel a little bit ease in introducing electric vehicle in the market. So let's talk about this problem called chicken and egg problem. So consider a situation where there is no charging station at all. In Jammu and Kashmir, if there will be no charging station, why will any manufacturer introduce vehicle in the Jammu and Kashmir region? Even people will not buy electric vehicle as such. So charging stations has to be there. Now, the cost of setting up a charging station somewhere around 20 to 30 kilowatt on an average basis. If you are charging a Hyundai Kona, you need a charging station of almost between 20 to 30 kilowatt capacity. So to install that particular charging station, it takes somewhere around 10 to 15 lakh, right? So electric vehicle companies, if they are introducing vehicles in the range of 10 to 15 lakh, right? You talk about Tata Tigor EV and this Hyundai Kona and all these companies. They are introducing their EVs in the range of 10 to 15 lakh, right? So it's not manageable for them to set up charging station on in any state, just like Tesla, because Tesla cars are somewhere in the range of 50 lakh, 1 crores, that much of price range. And they can afford to set up charging station, but Indian manufacturers, they cannot afford that. So the government has to come in the middle. They have to make sure that charging stations are set up so that electric vehicle manufacturers can feel an ease of introducing new models in the market. And that's why this FAME 1 and FAME 2 was introduced. Under FAME 1, 3,000 crores were allocated. Under FAME 2, 10,000 crores was allocated. So whenever you go and buy a two-wheeler, electric two-wheeler or three-wheeler or four-wheeler, there are some companies which are giving you subsidy, right? So that subsidy which you are getting is paid by the government of India to these companies. Now, government of India has also sort of made some sort of guideline that I will give you incentive. They have made guideline for companies that we are going to give you incentive only if you follow this particular guideline. And what is that guideline? The 2-3 important features of this guideline is that 60% of your components which you are which you are using to make your electric vehicles should be Indian made, right? Should be made by Indian original equipment manufacturers, OEMs. So in that case, that whole economy will grow, right? OEMs will start manufacturing the components, and then this is a sort of technique to improve the whole economy as a whole, because then until now, until 2019-18, you will see all these vehicle components are Chinese made only. I mean, you talk about any electric three-wheeler, what they are doing, they are just importing all the battery management system, motor controller, your whole communication system from Chinese manufacturers, and then assembling it in India. So that's where the government is not going to incentive to this company, and that's where the localization has to be introduced, and government is doing their bit. So these are some of the what you say pro bono benefits which has been introduced by the government. I will not go to the depth because I have to cover some technology part as well. FAME has 4 focus areas. technology development, demand creation, pilot projects, and charging infrastructure. So pilot project, you might have heard about this Mahindra collaborating with Ola in Nagpur back in 2017. So this was a part of pilot project done just to check what is the feasibility of electric vehicle. So the budgets are allocated for this particular thing. So Niti Aayog also has some say in the electric vehicle policy. So they basically published a research that if electric vehicles are introduced in the market, then by 2030, the energy consumption will reduce by 64% and the carbon dioxide emission will reduce by 37%. That's all. These are some of the budget allocation funding as such, like how much budget is allocated to which sector. Charging for setting up charging station, government has allocated 300 crore in 1920, 400 crores in 2021, then 300 crores, total 1000 crores has been allocated. This is for all the states. I mean, all the metropolitan cities, tier 1, tier 2 cities, and in the third stage, there will be tier 3 and tier 4 cities as well. So this is how the subsidy has to be taken care of. Now the subsidy that the government is giving is also depending on the battery kilowatt hour size. So if the battery kilowatt hour size is 2 kilowatt hour, so it is somewhere around 20,000 of subsidy is given. 5 kilowatt hour, 50,000, then 15 kilowatt hour, 1,50,000, depending on your it's 4-wheeler, 3-wheeler, or it's an electric bus. So it's not like that if the battery that you are using is 3 kilowatt hour in a 2-wheeler, then you will get 30,000. Nothing like that. It's just a what you call a baseline pricing that has been decided. No more incentive will be given. I mean, not beyond 20,000. Any manufacturers can avail if they are manufacturing 2-wheelers. So these are some of the companies which have come up in the electric vehicle segment. Some of the startups which have really shown their sort of caliber in the electric vehicle industry. Ather Energy, Torque Motors, Revolt, Influx Motors, Ultraviolet. Some models they have introduced. Okay, so models they have introduced. These are some of the startups related to servicing, repair of electric vehicles. Now, let me talk on the technical side. So these are the broad categories of electric vehicles in India. So there comes a category of electric vehicle which is less than 250 watt. In this particular category, you do not need any driving license as such. You do not need any RTO registration as well. So less than 250 watt electric two-wheeler is being treated not like a machine. It is treated like a bicycle, something like that, because the speed has to be limited below 25 kilometer per hour. If the speed of this vehicle will go beyond 25 kilometer per hour, then it will be not included in that particular free range. Then comes your e-rickshaw and e-cart category, L5, L3, L2 vehicles, four-wheeler passenger vehicles, passenger and commercial category, electric two-wheelers category, e-auto L5 category, and then heavy vehicles, that is into the electric bus fleet. So broadly, these are the 6 segment of electric vehicles to talk about. And L5, whenever I say L5, it is basically your 3-wheeler only, electric 3-wheeler only, but it is used for carrying some load. So all these companies like your what do you say, Flipkart, Amazon, they take L5 vehicles from us, and we are a partner of this company called Dot Electric Vehicle. They have like a fleet of somewhere around 5,000 L5 vehicle, and these vehicles are now used by Amazon and Flipkart for their last mile fleet delivery, because this is also a mandate from government that all these logistic provider, at least 20% of their fleet has to be electric. So on a test level, whenever a electric vehicle is manufactured, it has to go through a certain test from ARAI and ICAT. So these are the 3 basic test parameter which is being calculated. Other than that, there are somewhere around 20 to 30 test parameters also included in the testing, but I'm not discussing about that, but because that's another new horizon completely. But altogether, AIS stands for Automotive Industry Standards, and AIS 039 Revision 1 is a testing and homologation standard. If you want to know about this particular AIS 039, you can just Google. If you will type AIS 039, then the whole rules and regulations will come from ARAI website. So this particular standard is used for measurement of electrical energy consumption, and this is your analogous to your petrol consumption. It's like how much petrol is being consumed per kilometer. On a similar fashion, how much watt hour per kilometer is being consumed. Uh, this is a particular what you say step sort of technique to measure the electric energy consumption. Then comes your AIS 040 revision 1. This is a method to measure range. So it's not like you can measure how much range your electric vehicle has. That you can measure because you are a manufacturer, you can measure that, but still it has to go through some testing, right? So when the vehicle will go to ICAT or ARAI, they will have to follow this particular test standard, right? And using this particular standard only, they will test the range of your vehicle, and that range only you can put on your advertising banners and on your pamphlet and leaflet, things like that. So it's on a brief side, I'm just I have just written here that the range of vehicle is the distance travel for a full charge. But when you go open this document, you will get to know what are the steps involved in measuring the range of electric vehicle. Then comes AIS 041 revision 1. It is a method to measure net power and maximum 30-minute power. So it's a representation of the curve as a function of motor speed and the power at full load for electric driver train. So you have to plot a curve where you are putting motor speed, how much speed your motor is rotating at, how much RPM, and then how much power your motor is generating at the wheel end. So that you have to plot, and then you can get the maximum 30-minute power which your vehicle can get. So these are various types of electric vehicle which are available in the market, and you basically have to whenever you are talking about electric vehicle types, these are the 4 broad segments. So one is called battery electric vehicle. This is pure electric vehicle. There is nothing else other than your battery. There is battery, there is electric motor, and this is regenerative braking mechanism is there, right? So nothing other than that. Battery electric vehicle. You are charging your battery using a charger. That's all. Simple. But when you go to hybrid electric vehicle means you are although you are using the battery electric motor and regenerative braking, you are using IC engine as well. You are also using petrol and diesel tank. So what happens is there is no plug to charge this battery. You can see here there is no plug. There is no charging unit here. So your battery is getting charged using your IC engine only, and using the regenerative braking principles only, right? So in that case, the battery is getting charged using the internal mechanism only. While when you talk about plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, that is called PHEV, in this case, there is a charging plug also, charging cord, which is charging your battery, and then there is a petrol diesel tank through which you can put your gasoline oil into this as well. So you see here both modes of filling the tank as well as charging the battery is available. That's why it is called plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. In this case, the capacity of battery will be high. The electric motor capacity will also be high, right? While in this case, the capacity of battery will be low and electric motor capacity will be low. And finally, we come into FCEV, that is called fuel cell electric vehicle. So in case of fuel cell electric vehicle, you have a hydrogen tank, which is then connected through the fuel cell mechanism, and then with this fuel cell mechanism, your electric motor is getting drive, the energy is created, and it's being given to the electric motor. Electric motor is rotating, and then your whole battery electric vehicle principle is being repeated. So in this case only, the extra addition is your fuel cell. There is no charging which is happening. There is no charging at all. Everything is happening internally, but with a additional hydrogen tank and fuel cell inside it. So these are the four different variants of electric vehicle. This is a simple architecture of battery electric vehicle. The battery is connected through DC AC inverter and a controller. With this controller, your electric motor is connected, and with this electric motor, your this differential and the power delivering device which transmit the power to the wheels is being connected. So that's how the whole mechanism is, and always the battery is getting charged on a DC side, right? DC, if you are plugging for charging your battery on an AC circuit, that AC has to be converted into the DC to get the battery charged. So this has to be remembered. Vehicle with motors as the driving unit powered by batteries of appropriate chemistry are called battery electric vehicles. And I was talking about this CARB, which came into effect in 1990 back in US, California Air Resource Board, which gives a mandate for zero emission vehicle. And this basically paved the way for return of electric cars. So this is the basic configuration of battery electric vehicles. These are called traction battery pack. Anybody can tell me why this is called traction battery pack? Why not simply battery pack? Again, you see here, there is also written traction motor. So basically what happens is there are battery cells, small cells, just like you see in your mobile phones, that size of cells are there, lithium ion cells, and they are packed together. They are packed together either in series and parallel manners, and they constitute a module, right? Multiple batteries, right? So they constitute a module, and when modules are combined together, then this is called a battery pack. So this whole battery pack, along with your battery management system BMS and cell monitoring unit, as well as battery module, constitute a traction battery pack. And there is again a traction motor. There are inverters inside this, inverters and converters, which basically converts DC to AC for AC motors. And there is a battery management system, which basically SOC monitoring. The SOC monitoring is state of charge. Is basically decides what is the state of charge for your vehicle, and it also monitors the temperature and also do the cell balancing of the electric battery. So you can see here ECU, electronic control unit, electric power station, EPS, and other auxiliary devices are connected into this. Whenever we will discuss the architecture, maybe in future, if we had opportunity to interact once again, I will discuss the whole architecture in detail. For now, you can just understand these are the basic components which are used in electric vehicle, and this is the small battery cells which are there in the Tesla. This is a motor winding. Again, this is a battery management system, BMS, as well as motor controller are also embedded into it. And the goal as such is to design a the whole electric vehicle in such a manner that your system is properly optimal. Optimal means there is no much amount of components you need to use, but you are using as far as the component which can drive your vehicle at high performance. So this electric drivetrain system integration is one of the uh, crucial stage where uh, we see that there is lot of requirement from the industry side as well. There are people who basically ask us, the companies ask us to give them some experts who can do the system integration, because see, you can understand about BMS separately, you can understand about motor controller separately, battery separately, motor separately, but when it comes to integrating the whole components in a single module, then your proficiency is accounted, and that's where the skills of MATLAB and Simulink is much required. So MATLAB and Simulink is preferred quite a lot in the industry. uh, Degree, when you talk about the degree of hybridization, this is level of hybridization we talk about. On a micro side, not much of hybridization is sorry yes sorry so on a micro side, this sort of voltage operation is from 14 to 48 volt DC voltage, micro, mild, up to medium. And on a medium full power and plug-in side, there is high voltage operation. So this micro is uh, your fully hybrid. When it comes to plug-in, it is uh, completely plug-in, as in like the amount of power which you are withdrawing from the motor is quite high. That's why it is called plug-in, right? Plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, because I told you in that particular thing, plug-in sort of concept. So this is your plug-in hybrid electric vehicle where battery is also charged, your petrol is also given, and that's why you see on a plug-in side your voltage operation is quite high, and motor is also of high capacity. It is operating somewhere in the range of greater than 15 kilowatt, while on a mild and medium side it is between 10 to 15 kilowatt, and micro side it is 2 to 3 kilowatt. The motor of power of motor, yes. On an electric motor side, you look into there is a motor. This is your motor. See, you can see this motor is connected through a power modulator. Power modulator is connected through your battery source. This again, power modulator is connected through a controller. Uh, finally, this motor is giving the load. So you can see these are different level of communications. This particular line, double line, it is called CAN. So from controller, always CAN sort of communication happens. Here the electrical energy flow is happening between power modulator and motor, between battery source and power modulator, and mechanical energy flow is happening between motor and load. So this is a simple architecture of your electric motor. I was discussing about an alternate battery that we are going to see in the near future, and that's where this glass battery comes into the picture. So glass battery is one of the invention which is again in the process, and there is this person called John B. Goodenough. He was a pioneer in the lithium ion battery, and he is working on that particular side. So we'll see lots of alternative battery options in the near future, and it is predicted that the cost of battery that you see in electric vehicle uh, will reduce. Uh, so it is estimated that, let's say, today, if the price of battery that you see in a Hyundai Kona is somewhere around 3.5 lakh or 4 lakh, that cost is going to reduce by half by 2025. So it will come around 1.5 or 2 lakh at most. And then by 2030, again, it will come down. So but there is a lot of progress happening on the batteries industry side. When it comes to on the homologation side, so testing and homologation is required for electric vehicle, because you need a safe electric vehicle. Uh, the most of the problem will start happening during your flooding season. Right now, you see these states like Mumbai and Kerala, Bihar. These are all so much vulnerable to floods. And if let's say that you are sitting in an electric vehicle which is having like uh, 400 volt of current, 400 voltage of volt operating, that vehicle is operating on that voltage, and there is around 50 ampere, 100 ampere current in that particular vehicle. And if there is any short circuit which is happening because of flood, it would be a catastrophe for anybody, right? It might lead to serious fatalities, even to death. So we are bound to kind of uh, do the homologation so that all the electric vehicles are safe, and no air pollution is happening as such. So to make sure that the vehicles are all vehicles are on the same page, we have to do the testing and homologation. And I will not go into the depth of this. Is time still left us? Am I, where am I? I mean, you guys are finding it interesting, or what is happening?
No, sir, time is over, sir.
The time is over.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
But
okay,
if you want to continue, you can, sir.
okay.
But we have
Okay.
some limitation of time also. But if you want to continue, you can.
Okay. Uh, okay, great. So, can you look into this Indian type approval schemes? It basically is governed by the two committee from Ministry of Road Transport and Highway. One is Standing Committee on Emission (SCOE), and another one is CMVR Technical Standing Committee. So these two are dealing with different sections of requirement, and Ministry of Road Transport and Highway is the ultimate authority which provide rules and regulations which are required to be implemented on a motor vehicle side. So CMVR is Central Motor Vehicle Rule. CMVR was introduced back in 1980, uh, which basically constitute all the laws regarding your vehicle that you are driving on the road. And on a vehicle regulation side, if you look, there are four pillars whenever certain vehicle regulations comes into the action. First one is regarding environmental protection, energy conservation, consumer comfort, and then pedestrian and occupant safety. So all these rules are made considering these four parameters. So CMVR Technical Committee was formed in 1985, but uh, during recent year it was decided that all the battery operated vehicles should also fall into the CMVR purview. So CMVR will automatically publish rules and regulations for electric vehicles, and they are doing that. And they have introduced new automotive industry standards, AIS standards, which you can find on the ARAI website if you want to do the testing and homologation of vehicles. Right now, we see a lot of demand from the industry side because let's say there is a company which is manufacturing electric vehicle, but if that vehicle is not able to go on the road, then that is of no use. So now many testing and homologation experts have started coming, and what they do is they basically go through the CMVR rules, and they kind of provide feedback to the companies that this is how you have to make your headlights, you have to make your steering, you have to make your chassis, and all these rules and regulations. Uh, there are rules and regulations for original equipment manufacturers, like on the part basis, and also for the retrofitment. Like if somebody wants to retrofit the vehicle using the components, then also there is a regulation regarding that. So for OEM side, electric vehicle, hybrid electric vehicle, and charging station, these are the three category of sections we see on the OEM, and these are all covered under AIS automotive industry standards. So this is basically the complete standard when we talk about. So electric vehicle rules and regulations are covered in AIS 038, AIS 039, AIS 040. So all these rules and regulations are there. If you want to test and homologate your electric vehicle. For traction battery testing, you have to use AIS 048. So traction battery side, whenever you talk about, it's basically it is not done on the cell basis. So it's not like somebody will take a single cell and test it. It's always done on the pack level. The cell the battery packs which are packed in one particular module, that sort of testing is done. So there is separate testing for chargers, hybrid vehicle retrofitment. Again, I will not go into the detail of this again. So circle of safety, this is what we talk about. I mean, to make your electric vehicle safe, you need to have this sort of what you say safety parameters you have to follow, and these are some of the features which we have seen as of now. That there are vehicles which shows unintended vehicle movement, low energy stranding, rechargeable energy storage system, rupture resistance, and all these things. So again, flood side, you see the vehicle has to make safe, crash, frontal impact, EMC, electromagnetic compatibility. Nowadays, what is happening is because motors are there, controllers are there, battery is there, battery management system is there, and a lot of sensors are there. So sometimes the interference of electromagnetic waves are happening quite a lot. In the recent Hyundai Kona, we also trained Hyundai people. So we have seen that Hyundai Kona was also facing lots of issue regarding that. So a lot of work is also done on the EMC side, electromagnetic compatibility side. There are softwares on ANSYS. ANSYS have one software for checking this electromagnetic compatibility, which is primarily used in this industry. And this is what the safety is concerned. Because I was also told that faculties will be there. So this is what the research is broadly happening on electric vehicle side. Mostly focused on the localization of content on the Asian continent. What type of research we can do on an electric vehicle? Can we make concept car? Can we work on modeling, simulation, on optimization? Can we make a prototype? Can we make EV retrofit? Can we work on battery swapping? Can we make BMS? Can we do system integration? So all of these are some of the research trends which are happening on the academia level and on the industry level. Okay, so important slides I'm taking care of. Product development V model. This is the V model. Everybody, if you're going into electric vehicle industry, they will, and you are looking on the product development side, you have to know the V model. So V model is basically nothing but starting from start to the end, and then going from end to the start. So this is your you first do the requirement and specification. What is the basic power sizing I need to take care of? What is the battery voltage I need to take care of? What is the motor power I need to take care of? So everything you take care of in the first stage. Then you go to the system functional and architectural design. You do that using MATLAB and Simulink. And then you go to the subsystem design. You design small components which are there in to be utilized in your electric vehicle. And then you do the detailed design and optimization. Go back and do the component integration and verification. So during the subsystem design only, you do the component integration. During system functional design, you do the reliability verification. And during requirement and specification, you do the system validation. So you start from initial, go to the optimization level, and then go back to the system validation. So this is the product development cycle. It is if I go into the detail of discussing this, this will again take another 2-3 lectures. So every topic is of much detailed discussion. Current research trends on electric vehicle side is related to your architecture, motors, energy management, in-vehicle networking, smart charging solutions, software architecture, energy storage solutions, big data, artificial intelligence. So these are some of the topics for discussion currently. Will not go into detail of this. This is skipping a few parts. I thought lots of things. So on a smart charging side, you see there are two methods of charging. You look into the charging side, there is conductive charging and there is inductive charging. So conductive charging happens using wire and inductive charging happens without wire. So you see here, there is a big electric bus followed by electric four-wheeler, small, and there is coil in this bus, there is coil in this particular car. And this car can charge this electric bus. So then vehicle-to-vehicle energy transfer. This is what is currently, the future we are looking for. Battery swapping solutions are rising at a very larger scale. Now, because it takes time to charge your battery, almost even if you go to a very high DC fast charging station, then also 30 minutes or 40-50 minutes of time will be spent. So if you do not want to spend that much amount of time to do the charging, you can go to a battery swapping station. They will just take out the old battery and put in the new battery in place of that. So the work is going on that. This is intelligent charging solutions. See, you can see the vehicle is being charged using a drone. Vehicle to grid communication is happening. And okay, so on a skill development side, you see we are looking on a future where lots of skill deprivation is there. Students are not able to meet the industry demand, and that's why the government has to focus more on connecting academia with the industry. So that's why colleges are more integrating their curriculum with the industries. And we are also one of the partners, and we are working with Ministry of Skill Development, NSDC, SDC. Lots of new initiatives has been taken from the government side to start skilling and development. Need for skill development, lots of gap is there. So when you look into the future of sustainable mobility, it is starting from conventional vehicular technology. We have come up to the improvement of conventional vehicles, conventional fuels. Now we have high-speed fuels and things like that. Then we looked into the hybrid alternative fuels, like the fuels that we were taking from the plants, and then we look into the hybrid and EV technology. In the future is about hydrogen technology. There are these sort of engineers which are currently working on the EV side: automotive, mechanical, manufacturing, chemical, electrical, power electronics, material science, and environmental engineers. There are also these sort of engineers which we regularly get demand of from industries, be it design engineers, software, hardware design engineers, power electronics, proto development, EMI, EMC, system architects, testing engineers, harness development engineer. Just today only, we have got one requirement from Fortum that they need a system architect and integration engineer. So lots of demand is now rising in the electric vehicle industry. At DIY Group, we have courses for EV business owners and entrepreneurs. We call it as Nano Degree in EV Business. For design engineering students looking for job assistance, we are also giving them 100% job assistance for those students who are able to complete the course and at least achieve 70% in the exam. For them, we have launched Nano Degree in EV Technology. This is certified from ASDC and included in AICTE NEET curriculum, this new education policy curriculum. We are working closely with lots of industries and academia. And that's all for today. I think the slides went a little bit far, but sorry for that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. everybody, faculties and team in IIT Srinagar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Any participants, if you want to ask any question?
Yeah, please.
The session is open to you. You can ask any question if you want.
So I think from next month, 1st of August, we are starting this nano degree in EV technology. So anybody who is like in third year and they are going into the 4th year, they can look into this particular module because nano degree. Okay, so I think somebody has mentioned fees is very high. So I will consider that for NIT Srinagar. Maybe we could give you guys a little bit more discount on that. If in case you feel like there is fees high and you're not able to pay, we also give 100% scholarship to students who perform good in our exams. We conduct DET exam for that. So maybe next week, 1st of August, we are conducting a DET exam. You can go into the website and just appear for that, see how you are performing. You will get a free material for studying. We have a EV technology guidebook, which we specifically give to industries. So maybe I will forward it to Assis, and Assis, you can forward to the students.
Sure, sir, sure. I will share it with all the participants.
Right. They can go with that particular handbook. This is so internship we are providing. Yes. Recently we have got some around 4 interns from IIT Delhi, and because the demand is getting higher on the electric vehicle side, so we are looking for R&D interns basically. Those interns who can basically work on the content side. We will ask them to do some research, do some sort of or align them to work with some industries which we are partnered with. So internship link also, Ashish, just remind me, there is one link that we open for interns. I will share that with you and you can share that with the participants.
Definitely, I will do it for you, sir.
Right.
Sir, good evening.
Your voice is breaking.
So I just, yeah, can you hear me, sir? Hello.
Yes, I
Hello.
can hear you. Yes, I can hear you now.
Thanks for nice presentation. We got a lot of knowledge and
Thank you so much.
expertise through you.
Thank
I
you
just
so
wanted
much.
to clarify, as academicians and students and all, so on side, what would be
Right.
the appropriate area to undertake research project and student project?
On an EV side, if you look on the research project side, I think EMC, what I discussed about electromagnetic compatibility, because that's where the industries are facing most of the problem. Let me get back. EMCs are there. And one other thing which we are getting lots of request is on this side. And what is this called? Material side, because the materials which are used in the electric vehicle are not the material which you see on a regular vehicle. This is some other material. I have some so I'm talking about the seat metal which you are going to use to make the electric vehicles as such. So on that particular side also lots of work is happening. Design analysis will remain as as a segment where every now and then things are happening regularly. We have few PhD students from IIT Delhi and IIT Bombay. They are working on charging infrastructure side. So on a charging side, I mean, that can be one avenue you can look onto. what is this specific topic? I need to figure it out. Maybe we can communicate on the
Yes,
email.
sir, yes.
I have email I will forward. And
Okay, so really that's true, sir. Is there any
Right.
scope for working on controller side?
Scope for working on controller side. Yes, controller side using CAN communication, not PLC communication, CAN communication. So if you're proficient in the CAN side, BMS and your cloud connectivity, so the vehicle to vehicle communication, vehicle to infrastructure communication, that is happening on a
Sir, actually, I've been to improve the performance considering the duty cycle, the drive cycle and all. So can we work
Right.
on that performance of the motor or converter, like gearbox what does in the mechanical arrangement, like IC engines? Can we do
Yes.
that?
Yes. Motor performance side, you can do that. That's pretty there. I have a few presentations on the motor side as well, where we have discussed about making it more efficient. Because yes, motor will always remain as a subject of discussion, because you can see that in the European and US countries they are using induction motor, but for us we are still figuring out which would be the best thing, because we are considering BLDC and then permanent magnet motors and then magnetic efficiency. Uh, I will just give you a example. I was discussing about this company called Dot Electric Vehicle. They give their L5 vehicles to Amazon and Flipkart. Those vehicles which they bought in 2017, 2017-16, the only problem that has happened with those vehicles is that the motor efficiency has got lost. And why is that? Because the magnet which was used in that BLDC and permanent magnet which was there has lost its efficiency. So uh, there is work going on improving the efficiency of all these motor components and things like that. So
Thank you, sir.
every
Thank
other
you
sector
very
is
much for your.
yeah, every sector is a sector of research.
Yes,
We
sir.
can take
Sure.
1 month time to complete everything. Very
Yes, sir.
interesting
Sure,
subject
sir.
this is going to be.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, Avinash sir, for sharing such a huge details with us and for
Thank you.
finding out time in your busy schedule that you have mentioned that you are in a meeting, then again you have delivered us such a wonderful talk.
Thank
On
you,
behalf
thank
of NIT Srinagar, I thank you
Thank
for
you.
accepting our invitation and delivering such a beautiful talk.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I have a some hard for NIT Srinagar, because I have been in touch with the students from last 2-3 years. They were making some models, Baha models or something like that. Initially, they approached us, and from that time, that's why this invitation came, and I didn't thought for a second that okay, whether I should be there or not. I said okay, if NIT Srinagar is there, I would be surely interested to go.
So you are always welcome, sir. We are
Thank you.
always ready to host you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
sir.
so
Thanks a
much.
lot.
Thank you. Bye bye.